Civilization 7's problems and progress 100 days later. Call it roughly 4 months because I'm a little bit late. Firstly, let's start with the big problems that remain inside of Civ 7. Absolutely not an exhaustive list of the problems, but I have 4 key ones that I believe are significant enough to hurt the game for new players and old, but also ones that have fairly straightforward seeming solutions. They are big problems, but they are not impossible to solve. Kicking it off, number 1, age transitions. Now, I want to clarify. I don't share that fundamental criticism of ages just existing in Civ 7. I don't have an issue with a game being divided into 3 ages, and therefore you go through 2 age transitions. I like having 3 ages. I find the transition to be actually quite a good break, a good fit for when I might naturally want a break, and I like the idea of rewarding players for progress they've made through the previous milestones that they may have reached in the age. I dislike the rough or abrupt feeling edges to the age transition. Part of the way it feels doesn't feel right. For example, the sudden or unexpected end to an age, which quite often occurs when multiple players add a whole load of age progress through their legacy path rewards or perhaps research, and all of a sudden you jump from 89% to 99%, and you think, where did that 10% of the age go? It just disappeared. Secondly, maybe the teleportation of all of your units, or worse, their disappearance, also feels very jarring. I do sort of, however, acknowledge that having wars or conflict carry through an age could be either too challenging or ironically too disruptive due to all of the other changes, the bonuses and the choices that each player makes during that age transition. So maybe that one is a little bit more difficult to solve. Perhaps we could group units with commanders as a start. And then thirdly, not to rabbit on too long on this one idea, but maybe some things don't have to change. Maybe cities could stay cities, at least by default. Maybe more crisis dependent, I don't know. Confusingly maintaining their shape, form, populations, and size in a normal game, but arbitrarily just becoming towns, doesn't really sit right with me. Again, big overarching problem, but I think with simple individual solutions. And of course, you're welcome to disagree with that point, future points, all the points. This video could be a good place, actually, to hive mind information and feedback on Civilization 7 for the developers. So if you have some thoughts along the way, chuck them down in the comments below. I'll be there too. My second sticking point, my problem criticism with the game, is victory conditions. I've opted to specifically focus on victory, not the legacy paths more broadly, because I'm just not quite so sure that the first 2 ages are particularly problematic, though yes, issues do exist. Some people take issue with the Antiquity Age's race to build wonders, for example, through the cultural legacy path. Sometimes, at least with the current number of wonders in an age, you might just find you miss out. It could have been possible, but now it isn't. It's completely impossible for you to max it out by the time you're prepared to do so. The thing is, I kind of like that competition, that competitive element. It is truly competitive. A better example of a common criticism is probably the Exploration Age's economic legacy path. Finding treasure resources is always going to be just that little bit luck-based, sometimes extraordinarily luck-based, and its overall timing can be very difficult. It seems somehow also less attainable than the rest, even if it's your civilization's focus. The rest of the age paths just seem to come a little more naturally and easily than this one in particular. I should acknowledge here, by the way, that these challenges should absolutely be addressed, like no doubt, but my focus in particular is on the modern age, the 4 victory conditions. And within that, the cultural one is probably my main offender, though I also feel like the full set of 4 is kind of underwhelming. Generally, there are 2 simple steps to victory, and in no particular order because it does change. You'll need to, step number 1, move a unit, and step number 2, build a thing. Sometimes these change a little bit, of course. Science, right, there is actually no unit. Just work your way through the technology tree as you would anyway, and build, say, 3 things. All simple city projects, the most underwhelming of all possible things to build. Second victory type, maybe you're going for an economic victory. Here you need to, as you would do anyway, naturally unlock factories and naturally put one of the many resources you've got in them. Build up your railroad tycoon points, and then you'll need to send the world banker, just fly him to other capitals and click a little button, and then it's done. This one basically just happens naturally. It's almost like a time victory, and again, very simple to achieve. Just build factories, fly unit. Then, of course, there's the obvious, kind of self-explanatory, but notable exception of a military victory, with the added benefit of easy points thanks to the ideological condition in the modern age. And lastly, we have culture, where the unit that you will be controlling in this example is a little different, to be fair. It has you perhaps in the most frustrating AI race of all time to run and stand on certain map tiles. And then, of course, this goes on through multiple iterations of research and discovery before building a thing. Now, I think this one is particularly problematic because firstly, that race that I mentioned with your explorers going out, I mean, the AI is just incredibly frustrating. I don't know about you, this is maybe more of a personal point, but it is incredibly frustrating to deal with in this race. The way that it moves around, the way that it hogs the spots, the way that it gets stuff straight away on deity, it's like, what am I even doing trying to run around the map here? And then secondly, and maybe more importantly, there is, unlike some of these other conditions, take science for example, it's kind of always the same, right? Like that one hasn't fundamentally changed. I mean, I think back to building the booster parts in Civilization 5 and moving them around, but ultimately here, science has kind of always been the same. However, there is I believe, a much richer legacy of cultural victories in days gone by. Think Civilization 6, for example, the rich tourism mechanic is missing here, and it cannot be replaced by this crappy race with explorers. I just don't think it can be. And aside from that frustrating race with the explorers, and the obvious military exception, there is, I believe, generally a lack of competition between players. Combine that with the broad ease with which you can play down not just one or even 2 of the victory paths, but practically all of the paths simultaneously. The victory options make for an often kind of unexciting ending, which is a shame because I really enjoy the other ages and I like the idea of the sort of hardware that's on offer in the modern age. My third problem category will surprise literally not a single one of you at home. I'll keep it brief, but I do hope I have some nuanced thoughts here. The UI is an area that has seen a huge amount of attention, right? Countless improvements and tweaks have been made along the way, of course, notably for me, an improvement to adjacency information, to the total tile yields, and some of the city, tile, and resource explanations. Though other areas still need a lot of work, some of them desperately. While the visual style, plain and simple, sometimes monochrome, faces criticisms, I think the deeper functional issues around things like the tooltips need to be addressed first, those glitchy tooltips. And it's not just fixing or restoring functions here, for me also want more. I'd like to know, for example, how much yield exactly that I'll get from a policy card. So if it's one that says you'll get science on your vegetated tiles or your whatever buildings, how much will I get for implementing that? I don't really want to spend time going around counting all of these things when I'm potentially juggling loads of different options by the end of the game. I don't want to go around and count every single vegetation tile within my cities. I need that ideally calculated upfront on the cards so I know real time the kind of yields that I might be getting. And I still find that I need more clarity when I'm overbuilding. What's old? What's just costing me something and providing me almost nothing? What's new? What kind of things will be returning and what won't? I'd love that to be visually clearer. Even just something like a color code, I think, would make a huge difference for most of us, unless you're colorblind. Speaking of the idea of districts and buildings, my fourth point I'm calling homogenized districts. making everything kinda the same. I view this problem really as a trifecta of issues that together remove some of the challenging decision making, or indeed the soul of districts, and therefore the kind of civilizations that you're playing or the cities that you're building. Generic, broad, and easily attainable adjacency bonuses mean that most districts can easily succeed in kind of most scenarios. Sure, there are still bad places to place a settlement, a town, or a city, but because you have that flexibility, you're not even that hamstrung with that idea. But putting that to one side, there is still some flexibility, there is still some decision making. But is it enough? Take resource adjacency, for example. It is so broadly useful as an adjacency bonus. It applies to many different types of buildings, multiple types of yield. And it's something that, I don't know about you, but I never struggle to find at least a good bonus, often a great bonus. Think about the amount of times you've settled your city. There's probably 3 or 4 resources around. There are probably therefore many tiles that will receive +1 or +2 from that adjacency bonus. This is generally, not always, but generally true across the board as well. If you think about, for example, just how many rivers, minor, navigable, as well as the coastal tiles, which generally apply the same kind of adjacency bonus. I hope that you get the idea that I'm trying to bring across here. But I must also admit, there's a little caveat. I'm slightly conflicted on this one. Part of me doesn't want to lose the flexibility that Civilization 7 offers through its district design and implanted buildings. I think that this is useful, particularly, but not exclusively, for the less experienced players to not be stuck with a holy site in the wrong place forever for literally the rest of the game. 10 hours staring at that thing because they missed a good spot or simply misclicked. Granted, a reload could probably get around that one. The idea here is that I don't want to lose the flexibility. And indeed, part of it is almost necessary due to the ages system and overbuilding and choosing a new civilization. I want to keep that flexibility, but there does need to be, I think, a little bit more challenge inserted, at least into the way that the adjacency bonuses work. Maybe they could offer more, but in restricted, fewer places, right? More bonus, but less opportunity to get it. But don't strip it back completely. I don't want to be stuck with that holy site forever and ever, please. Stuck forever and ever, like I thought Civilization 7's overall review score on Steam, at least, I'm assuming the most dominant platform for the game. And it turns out that this mixed review, currently sitting a little bit lower than 50% actually, as you can see at 48%, didn't stay put. In fact, recent reviews are trending down. Just 37% in the last month were positive. So actually, the overwhelming number of reviewers reviewed negatively. They do not like Civilization 7. As another not at all representative, but another sample, I thought I would poll you. So in preparation for this video on the community page for the channel, I posted a little poll. Only 4 options were available, which sucks, but nonetheless, it kind of speaks for itself. You can see, even amongst relative fans, I'm assuming at least enthusiasts maybe, you can see a really mixed bag. The player accounts for Civilization 7, at least the ones we have available, which is, of course, again, drawing on the PC community, you can see have fallen a lot, right? Peaks around 85,000, now down to peaks around 10, 11, maybe 12,000 players. Absolutely fallen off a cliff. If you've looked at player count numbers before, you'll know all of the caveats that go with these, including the fact that this is really not that uncommon for a new game to receive loads of hype, then for it to fall off. The question is, what happens next? What happens over the next year or 2 years? In what will, if at least past main Civilization games are anything to go by, 5 and 6, likely be a very long development cycle for this game. One often overlooked game, of course, Civilization Beyond Earth, released about 2 years before Civ 6. Now, Beyond Earth paints perhaps a worst case scenario for what can absolutely happen to a game with Sid Meier's name on it, right? Here is your proof. debuts. It has a couple of peaks in popularity as new expansions or big updates are rolled out, but generally just kind of falls off to nothing. Most games will do this over their natural lifespan anyway, but I thought this was an interesting comparison, and one that is often overlooked, as I say, when people are drawing these kinds of conclusions. For obvious reasons, it doesn't have a number with it, it's a bit different, it's sci-fi, nonetheless interesting, I think. Now let's shift gears a bit more. We've talked about the problems, we've had a little bit of a status update, reviews, how are people kind of feeling. Let's move towards the positive side of things for the game and the community more broadly. On platforms setting out to rival the likes of Skyrim or Grand Theft Auto 5, Civilization has or is releasing on 2 new platforms in its first roughly 4 months. First up, a VR version of the game was reasonably separately developed actually, but released on the MetaQuest 3 and 3S to somewhat mixed reviews. Secondly, release as of June 5th on Switch 2. That's right, the second release will of course be the Nintendo Switch 2 version. I'm a Nintendo fan, so I'm looking forward to this one, though whether I pick up Civilization 7 itself, and whether that translates to any content here on the channel, I honestly don't know. And then we need to talk about the big P word, progress, to go alongside the many problems. Patch updates here, outside of those platform releases, are the obvious ones. The latest update, the most recent time of recording, really mimics a lot of the other ones that we've seen. There'll be a few new features, say a new map type like Pangea Plus, new yet familiar, or the expansion of multiplayer player counts. Like most other updates, there is a usually massive list of improvements and fixes to the UI, and really to all areas, AI, diplomacy, combat. All of these generally are touched by the major updates, and multiple balance passes have taken place and likely will take place across around 10 to 15 different civilizations and leaders. Firaxis's attention to the game is also very clear. Update cadence, how regular they are at the moment, sits at roughly 2 per month for PC. They were a little more regular when the game first came out, though again, Firaxis continue to update. They continue to release video updates, patch updates, that kind of thing. If you're playing on console, well, you did receive the game at the same time as PC, so credit where credit's due, we don't often see that. However, console does tend to sort of operate a little bit on its own schedule, and again, there's actually variance within consoles. Different types, right? Switch versus PS4, Xbox, blah, blah, blah. The updates tend to focus on things like stability and performance, and these can overall lag behind that PC version, the mothership version, when it comes to the feature updates anyway. Finally, of course, in terms of progress, the other big main point would have to be the paid DLC. This, though, likely brings a lot of ire with it. And rightly so, right? The game has released, not in a polished state, not in a complete state. People will have mixed views about exactly how to label that state, but I think that generally most people can at least broadly agree on that. And then to have to pay more money to get more content leaves a sour taste. Nonetheless, I bought it, I've got it. I think that the content is generally what you would expect from a Civilization game. If you've played Civ 5, Civ 6, this kind of content release is familiar, particularly with Civilization 6, because it follows that sort of smaller updates, i.e. 1 or 2 civilizations. You get Great Britain and Bulgaria, or you get Carthage and a leader. You know, these sort of bite-sized things released semi-regularly. There does, however, appear to be a little bit of an opening, a little bit of mystery around what might come in future. We've talked about future updates and roadmaps, as well as the patch updates before here on my channel plenty. That's why I'm not going to drill into specific details, right? I literally have a video on almost every update. If you wanted the detail, you've probably already had that. Nonetheless, detail around future updates and Firaxis's future plans is a little murky sometimes, really detailed in others. There is not a grand plan, a sort of overarching roadmap over the next year or two available at the time of recording. Perhaps there'll be one in future. I believe they've signaled an intention to have something like that or update something like that. And of course, you should stick around here, subscribe, blah, 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 because I'm sure I will cover that if it does eventuate. What we know right now is that there are many continued planned updates to some of the problems that we've discussed here. like UI, right? That's the big one. The one they've acknowledged. They've said, hey, there'll be bigger updates coming soon, TM, to try and address this broader problem with the game. And indeed, that rings true for a lot, but not all of the things that we've talked about today, particularly the deeper restructuring of, say, something like victory conditions, which are obviously massively important to the game, fundamentally shaping, at the very least, the modern age. To bring everything together, I've highlighted some of my problems, and a lot of them are shared problems. I've seen many of you comment them, and we've talked about them before, like the UI, but also things like homogenized districts, particularly their adjacency bonuses, and of course, the legacy path and victory condition discussion that we had at the start of the video. But to bring it all together, to conclude, these perhaps solvable problems built on top of a structure that, frankly, some people just don't like. The first time I played Civ 7, I said to the people around me, I like this, it's fun, it's different. People are going to hate the change to the formula. It's a lot like humankind. Now, that's obviously a massive oversimplification about what's actually playing out here. As discussed, the criticisms or the problems come with a lot of nuance and subjectivity, but I think that the problems I've discussed are shared. As I say, they have workable solutions, but the deeper frustration, commonly that might be a disdain for the very fact that civilizations change twice in a full game. I don't think that these core fundamental mechanics are likely to change, likely to ever change, to be honest. And so therefore there'll always be this level of frustration where the new game doesn't match the old one, yet as games routinely have proven in the franchise, that doesn't have to be an issue. It clearly overall, I would argue at least, wasn't. Eventually, with 5, after its DLCs, don't play the base game, or 6, again, after its updates, for sure. Though to briefly play devil's advocate here, for this specific example, actually maybe an optional mode, just spitballing, but some kind of game mode, like the many that were on offer in Civilization 6, could solve it, right? Call it a classic mode, call it a fixed mode. Chaos mode, even, it might end up being. I don't know, where civs don't change. It might work. It might be very well balanced. Depending on how you work it, some civs may not have a lot of flavor or uniqueness in any given age, but it could still function. Why not have it there? Well, in part, maybe because the already flourishing, hopefully more significantly in future with better support like Steam Workshop support, etc., modding community can rise to meet some of these challenges. Though of course, for many, that's not actually going to be a solution. But we did discuss a lot of solutions in this video, and I'm sure that there are many more already, probably, by the time you're watching this, down in the comments below. Some disagreeing with me, others maybe adding extra detail, joining points. Thank you if you have contributed, and thank you for watching this video. My overall, quick and dirty opinion on Civilization 7 remains. I actually really enjoy it. I'm used to playing 4X games with ages. I don't mind the structure of it. It will continue to be a game that I will cover here on the channel, despite the massive amount of criticism that it receives, because I genuinely enjoy it. If that changes, it'll go away. It's as simple as that. Thank you so much again for watching. I'll see you next time.